Bakit hindi dapat iboto si Bongbong Marcos?
Number one, sinungaling. Pangalawa, in the difficult moments, hindi siya nagpapakita.
Si Mayor Isko, bakit hindi dapat naman?
Hindi klaro yung paninindigan sa maraming bagay.
Ping Lacson,
Maraming salita pero kulang sa on-the-ground na gawa.
si Senator Manny Pacquiao.
Yung kabutihan ng loob kasi sa atin hindi sapat.
Bakit ikaw ang dapat namin iboto?
Ang mga babaeng leader nagsha-shine during crisis.
You saw snippets of Vice President Leni Robredo's interview with Boy Abunda, where the presidential aspirant fired shots against her rivals when asked why they do not deserve the Filipinos' vote.
Her bluntness, as expected, irked her opponents. But Robredo says she just answered the questions and that she knew her responses will ruffle feathers. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Hall.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Vice President and presidential candidate Leni Robredo spoke at an interview with television personality Boy Abunda. And she pounced at her four co-aspirants in an interview with host Boy Abunda.
Beside the mixed reaction from the public, the other presidential bets have reacted from the comment. Ryan Ang with the top story.
In an interview with entertainment host Boy Abunda, Vice President Leni Robredo did not hold back in taking jabs at her opponents. When asked by Abunda why Filipinos should not vote each aspirant, first up was former Senator Bongbong Marcos Jr.
Number one, sinungaling. Pangalawa, in the difficult moments, hindi siya nagpapakita.
Robredo, meanwhile, hit Manila Mayor Isko Moreno for his stance on things.
Hindi klaro yung paninindigan sa maraming bagay.
The VP, meanwhile, questions Senator Ping Lacson's experience on the field.
Kulang sa on-the-ground na gawa.
As for Senator Manny Pacquiao, she says a good heart is not enough.
Yung kabutihan ng loob kasi sa atin hindi sapat.
When asked why people should choose her instead, Robredo had this to say.
Ako, Boy, pinakita sa nitong krisis na to and many other crises in the past na ang mga babaeng leader nagsha-shine during crisis. And ako, pinakita ko yan sa maraming trabaho namin dito sa OVP. Marami kaming mga krisis na nalagpasan with flying colors.
Her responses to Abunda's questions, as expected, irk her rivals. In a tweet, Senator Lacson claims he's done enough action on the ground, just not publicly. Marcos Camp, meanwhile, says that they do not want to be involved in negative and hate campaigning. As for his part, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno advises the public to wait for his interview with Boy Abunda. Vice President Leni, amid the reactions, has said she just answered the question thrown at her and refused to comment any further.
Ayoko nang dagdagan pa yung conversation. Alam ko na may mga mararuffle ako ng feathers, pero tinatanong kasi ako eh. Ayoko naman na sumagot na parang umiiwas. Sa akin lang yung tanong, sinagot ko. Ready ako pero para mag-react pa sa mga reaction nila, tingin ko hindi naman necessary na.
Meanwhile, Robredo believes that these interviews are a big help as it allows presidential aspirants to lay out their platforms. For News 5, Ryan Ang, We Are One News.
It was not just her rival. Some say Robredo's answers were polarizing. But what do we make of her approach in her recent interview? That big question and more with political analyst Professor Jean Encinas Franco. Professor Franco, welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen.
Professor Franco, I mean, there were critics. There were also those who were applauding her answers. On balance, do you think she took a risk? Did she pay a price or did she gain anything?
Well, she took a risk. And I guess she gained something because she wanted to portray her feisty side, no? Kasi lahat naman ng mga paratang sa kanya from the very start are really very, ginagawa siyang parang mahina dahil babae siya, walang substance dahil babae siya. Pero in fact, she showed that she's really capable of being feisty. So that's one. The second one is that's probably how she really felt about her opponents.
And talking about that, as you said, the quote-unquote, the feisty side, in what other areas did that come up in the interview? And what other aspects to her do you think she was able to show to the voters?
Of course, she was able to present her platform. She was able to say her stand on various issues that the country faces. And in fact, she was also able to lay down her parang yung framework niya of governance, which is consultative, always seeking solutions from people on the ground.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was political analyst Professor Jean Encinas Franco. As the official start of the campaign season draws near, Comelec has laid out its guidelines for debates and voting. The poll body is preparing a memorandum of agreement for the debates. It will cover what the candidates can bring and should expect from the debates. Attendance, however, is not required. Meanwhile, poll preparations are also underway. Vote counting machines have been refurbished and have undergone stress testing. The Comelec has also been surveying polling places as they look to finish their list by next month. Along with these, guidelines for voting under the new normal have been laid down. Voters must present their vaccination cards. Unvaccinated or partially vaccinated people will have to show a negative swab test result. Face shields will also be required. Voters will then undergo health screenings. The entire process is expected to last up to 30 minutes.
These are the other big stories tonight. The Omicron subvariant dominates the latest genome sequencing run in the country, with more than 300 cases of the stealth strain. Is the road to recovery within sight? The economy outperformed in the last quarter of 2021, pushing GDP above government target at 5.6%. And never mind that we are in a tropical country who says we can't take part in the Winter Olympics. Donning our flag in Beijing is our lone bet for the Games. Alpine skier Asa Miller. Get to know him more after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Things might be looking up for Metro Manila. Looking at the data, the Octa Group says there might be reason to believe that we are over the Omicron hump.
Be that as it may, government says it's not yet time to downgrade to alert level 2. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the story.
With COVID numbers consistently going down, things are looking up for Metro Manila. The Octa Research Group says a COVID resurgence in NCR is now highly unlikely, and it may be time to start easing quarantine restrictions and shortening the number of days of those staying in isolation facilities.
We're now down to high risk, and I think within a few days by next week, we'll be down to moderate risk.
Incubation period for Omicron is 3 days as compared to 5. I actually believe we can shorten this to 3.
Coming from more than 20,000 new cases per day, on Wednesday, only 2,500 cases were reported in the NCR. Reproduction rate, or the number of individuals a COVID positive could infect, is now down to 0.63. Octa microbiologist Father Nico Striaco says it looks like the capital region is now already out of the woods. But Interior Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya said we cannot loosen up just yet. But if we finally go down to alert level 2, Malaya said we could also let go of the controversial no-vax, no-ride policy.
Posible po yan dahil ito pong no-vax, no-ride policy ay applicable lamang pag alert level 3 and higher.
But that's still a question mark for the rest of the country, with new daily cases continuing to reach new highs. Baguio City, for example, has a positivity rate of 65%, according to Okta, which means 6 out of every 10 person getting tested for COVID-19 in Baguio turn up positive. The health department reported on Thursday 618 new Omicron cases, and majority of these are Omicron subvariant BA.2. But so far, scientists don't see any significant difference between the two subvariant. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
The Omicron subvariant BA.2 is dominating the latest sequencing run of the Philippine Genome Center. Dr. Cynthia Saloma says of the 517 samples sequenced last January 13, more than 300 were stealth Omicron. 180 samples tested positive for the BA.1 subvariant, while the original Omicron variant only had one. 248 of the cases sequenced came from Metro Manila. The Delta variant was barely detected since December. The emergence of new variants will play a crucial role in our road to recovery, especially now that 2021 GDP has exceeded government's targets. Tonight's big number is 5.6%. That's the country's full-year GDP last year, slightly above government's target band of 5 to 5.5%. This is a sharp recovery from the 9.6% contraction in 2020. This also comes after government logged a 7.7% GDP growth in the fourth quarter.
For the big story in sports, after the Tokyo Olympic Games, the best athletes will gather in Beijing next week for the Winter Games. As for the Philippines, all eyes will be on 22-year-old skier Asa Miller, who is the country's lone vet. Let's get to know him more in my report.
No ice, no problem. Despite being a tropical country, the Philippines will compete in the upcoming Winter Olympic Games. Meet Asa Miller, the country's lone qualifier in Beijing.
Determination, hard work, and passion keep me going until I reach my goal for me and my country.
While many Filipino athletes chose to learn basketball or football, Asa grew up skiing. At 17, he already represented the country at the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games.
I began skiing when I was 1.5 years old, and I began ski racing when I was 8. Over time, my love for the sport grew. It really kicked off when I was 16, and I began ski racing for the Philippines.
Coming into his second Winter Olympics, Asa says he is more confident after learning a lot from his first Winter Games. Asa is set to see action in 2 events, the slalom and the giant slalom.
I'm very confident in my abilities and where my skiing is at the moment, and so I'm just hoping I can bring out the best of it on those competition days. I'm very proud, and I can't wait to show off and represent the Philippines at the Games.
For Asa, his biggest inspiration coming into the Games is Hydrin Diaz, who gave the Philippines its first Olympic gold through weightlifting.
While I don't have the same expectations for myself in competition, I definitely want to show my improvement and improve upon my placement.
With Asa being the lone Filipino in the entire Winter Games, young Filipino skiers have expressed their support for the 21-year-old.
We wish you all the very best. Thank you for breaking, the stereotype of our country not being able to compete in Winter Olympics because of our situation.
We wish you all the best and always know that you have our support, the whole country's support, and we know that we will do really well.
I certainly hope my journey serves as inspiration. I hope that with this Olympic Games appearance, that trajectory continues and that more people realize that they can ski for the Philippines.
The Beijing Winter Olympic Games kicks off on February 4. Gretchen Ho, we are One News.
Time for another quick break. When we return, counterfeit bills in the ATM, it's the last place you'd expect to find them, but authorities urge the public to check their bills from now on, just to be sure. Another woman is not holding back. Comelec Commissioner Rowena Guanzon bears that she voted to disqualify Bongbong Marcos in the presidential race. And speaking of Marcos, their family has long been linked to the Taliano gold bars. But did you know that you can actually get your hands on one? It's just that it melts quite differently. Learn more about our latest find online after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. An ATM perhaps would be the last place where you'd expect to get fake banknotes. But the Bangko Sentral says you can't be too sure.
They are advising the public to always check the money dispensed by ATMs. But how can you tell if your money is fake? Shaila Francisco tells us in this report.
Karen, not her real name, was forced to buy her own fake money detector after falling victim to a counterfeit bill. Just last week, she was informed by a bank that a 1,000 peso bill from her car loan payment was fake. She was given a counterfeit receipt and is now planning to report it to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.
Baka makulong din po ako. Siyempre, natatakot din po ako kasi sabi ko nga po sa tanda ko pong ito, never pa po akong napeke sa pera.
Part of the money came from Karen's friend, who said it came straight from an ATM.
Yan po naniniwala na peke. Galing sa ATM, so withdraw ko. Alam ko naman nalolokohin namin sa Patagal na namin kaibigan yun.
Other ATM users have also expressed their concerns over the incident.
Pag nag-withdraw na po ako ay tinitingnan ko rin mabuti kung para iwas.
Hindi natin dapat maranasan yun kasi sa kanila nga nanggagaling yung pera eh. So, bakit tayo dapat yung mag-hustle? Dapat silang mag-hustle doon.
The BSP, for its part, is reminding the public to always check banknotes through the feel, look, tilt approach. A bill is legit if one can feel that a security paper is used and prints are embossed. One can also look for a watermark, scattered security fibers, asymmetrical serial numbers, and the word Filipino in baybayin. Lastly, tilted to see the movements of the colors and design bearing the denomination value and the word BSP. Colors of the embossed denomination value and the pearl placed on the side should also change. Holders of a suspected counterfeit banknote are advised to immediately report it to the bank that owns the machine. The fake bill should be replaced if proven that it came from the ATM. Banks will also be held liable if they fail to observe protection measures for their clients.
ATM services are part of core banking function of deposit taking, and banks are bound by law to exercise the highest degree of diligence.
The BSP is now looking at tighter measures for currency operations. Currently, production of counterfeit money carries a jail sentence of at least 12 years and a maximum fine of 2 million pesos. Shaila Francisco, We Are One News.
Comelec Commissioner Rowena Guanzon says she voted to disqualify presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos over moral turpitude for failure to pay income taxes in the 1980s. Ahead of her retirement from Comelec on February 2, Commissioner Guanzon revealed to GMA News that she voted to disqualify Marcos Jr. in the presidential elections. In the interview, Guanzon said she believes the undue delays to the case is part of an attempt to invalidate her vote by releasing the resolution after her retirement. But Guanzon says she has already submitted her opinion and that it should therefore be counted. Guanzon also feels that some people are supposedly trying to influence the commissioners on their votes. Guanzon is part of the Comelec's first division handling the disqualification petitions filed by martial law survivors. Here are the other big stories around the world. 2 U.S. Navy carrier strike groups are holding operations in the West Philippine Sea amid Chinese aircraft incursions in Taiwan's air defense zone. The Carl Vinson and Abraham Lincoln aircraft carriers and their escort ships began operations on Sunday. The U.S. Navy says the two groups will engage in joint operations, including enhanced maritime communications, anti-submarine warfare, replenishments at sea, and combat readiness, among others. Pope Francis is telling parents of gay children to show their support and not condemn them. Pope Francis addressed parents facing difficult situations in the lives of their children, including those who see that their children have different sexual orientations. The Pope had earlier said that gays have the right to be accepted as family members and siblings, and that while the Church cannot accept same-sex marriage, it can support civil unions.
Another big story in sports. The Philippine Sports Commission urges pole vaulter E.J. Obiena and Patapa President Philip Huico to set aside their egos and resolve their rift. In an online interview, PSC Chairman Butch Ramirez said that Obiena needs to humble himself and not listen too much to people around him, while Huico needs to act like a father. This comes after world number 5 pole vaulter rejected the PSC's offer for mediation between the two parties. Ramirez stressed the need to end this, quote, ugly controversy.
Nakakahiya. Nakakahiya sa taong bayan na siyang nag-funding. Nakakahiya sa mga politiko na nag-allocate ng pera. Mediation is something that we stand for because it is the best option. It is the best option to seek resolution of the matter. However, there should be a voluntary willingness from both parties.
To honor the late NBA great Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna Bryant, a sculpture of the two was placed in the helicopter crash site where they died alongside 7 others 2 years ago. The 73-kilogram bronze statue shows the pair wearing basketball jerseys and sharing a loving glance. Sculptor Dan Medina said the sculpture was made to help fans heal. Engraved on the statue's steel pedestal are the names of the 9 victims of the crash. It also includes an inscription of Bryant's famous quote, "Heroes come and go, but legends are forever."
The search is over. The fabled Italiano gold bar is real and it's available online.
But no, this one comes not in gold, but in the form of a soap bar. Unlike the popular Italiano gold bar myth linked to the Marcoses, this one boasts authenticity. Made by seller Sabonista on Facebook, the Italiano Gold Bar Soap 24 Karat is a whitening soap that is going viral on social media for its witty marketing strategy. A purchase of the fabled Gold Bar Soap comes with a certificate of authenticity.
The Italiana Gold Bar Soap is currently being sold on an e-commerce platform. It is marketed as having the capacity to erase the dark spots of Philippine history. The online shop sells other equally funny named soap bars, including a Lenny Robredo hand soap. While it does not live up to its 24-karat promise, it is worth the hype, at least according to buyers who have given the online shop a 100% satisfaction rating.
Makakabili nga niya na makahawak naman ng ginto.
Pero ang tanong dyan kahit pa maging successful yun, gagawin ka ba niyang bilyonaryo? Malabo pa rin yata yun.
Pero iba pa rin yung makahawak ka, di ba? Yun nga lang, pagkatapos
tunaw ka agad.
Well, at least, we saw it in reality. Came to life. in some form. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.